Here he is now, David Centaur. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Centaur Show with your host, David Centaur. And today, we're going to be talking about caffeine. Caffeine is a bitter white substance found naturally in coffee beans, cocoa beans, and tea leaves. It is the most popular drug in the world, and the most popular form of it is coffee, of course. And 65% of adult Canadians drink an average of 2.8 cups of coffee per day, and that's approximately 420 milligrams of caffeine per day. And people know that coffee obviously gives you a burst of energy, and that's the main reason for its consumption. However, most people don't actually know how an average cup of coffee is produced. Let's welcome our good friend Chindi from the Coffee Brewing Studio to help us out with this question. But first, let's cut to our newest segment, Puns with David. And now, Puns with David. Hey, what do you call it when someone steals your coffee mug? Mugging.
Hello, I'm Chindi. I will be talking about the extraction of caffeine from coffee beans. There are many methods, but I will only describe 3 of them. The first is the Reselius process. This was the first commercially successful decaffeination process. In this method, coffee beans are steamed with various acids and bases, the most common being a saltwater solution, and then using benzene as a solvent to remove the caffeine. However, this is no longer used due to health concerns. The second method is the direct contact method. In this method, the coffee beans are steamed for approximately 30 minutes. Then, they are rinsed repeatedly and put in direct contact with organic chemical solvents such as ethyl acetate and methylene chloride. The solvent is then drained and steamed away. Some of the chemical often resides in the coffee beans and can have harmful long-term effects. The third method is the indirect contact method. Drinking coffee decaffeinated through this method is safer because the chemicals are not in direct contact with the coffee. The coffee beans are soaked in hot water for several hours, essentially brewing a very strong pot of coffee. The coffee beans are then removed, and the same chemicals used in the direct method, ethyl acetate and methylene chloride, are added to the water. Finally, the water is evaporated away, leaving the caffeine behind.
Did you know that?
Caffeine was first isolated from coffee in 1819 by the German chemist Runge.
Now you know!
And now, Puns with David. Why are Italians so good at making coffee? It's because they really know how to espresso themselves. Welcome back, everybody. And now we have a special guest named the Chowster that's going to come and talk to us about how coffee is actually produced. Let's welcome her.
All coffee making starts with a red, cherry-like berry. The berries that have been picked go through a screening process to eliminate those that are not ripe or large enough. Machines remove the flesh from the berries, also known as cherries, to remove the seeds, which are also known as coffee beans.
Did you know that?
Caffeine works in the same parts of the brain as cocaine, amphetamines, and heroin.
Now you know!
Then, the seeds go through a fermenting process to remove any material that may still be on them. They are washed with an abundant amount of water to remove any remaining residue. Finally, they are dried, sorted, and labeled as green coffee beans. If the desired product is decaffeinated coffee, it is processed by using solvents, or the water method, before roasting. If the solvent method is used, the beans are then carefully washed to rid of any traces of the solvent. Another method of decaffeination is to steam the beans. However, it is important to remember that there is no such thing as caffeine-free coffee. It is impossible to get all the caffeine out of the coffee beans. The next stage involves roasting the beans, which influence the taste of the final product. Throughout this process, the beans lose moisture and decrease in size. During the roasting, the starting temperature is about 200 degrees Celsius, and as the heat breaks down the starches, the beans are caramelized. As oils and acids in the beans break down, other oils are developed. One of these oils is caffeine, which is what gives coffee its taste and aroma.
Did you know that?
Caffeine withdrawals begin within 12 to 24 hours and can last 2 to 9 days.
Now you know.
After the roasting is finished, the beans are set to cool, unless the coffee is to be pre-ground. In that case, the beans are sent to the mill right after the roasting process. If the coffee is to be instant, it would be brewed in water after grinding to gain an extract. This extract is changed into a dry powder. If the coffee is whole bean, it is packaged into foil-lined bags to retain the flavor and aroma. Pre-ground coffee is placed into aluminum foil, plastic film, or cans. Instant coffee is placed into tin cans or glass jars.
Did you know that?
Decaffeinated products still have caffeine in them.
Now you know.
And welcome back, everybody. Thanks to Chindi and the Chowster, we now know how caffeine is extracted and made into coffee, the consumer product that we all love and drink every morning. But now, before we end the show, our correspondent Lily and the Chowster have gathered together to talk about some very interesting and amusing facts regarding caffeine.
Caffeine is the world's most used psychoactive drug because it releases dopamine, which makes you happy. It increases concentration, decreases fatigue, and gives you awesome memory. It even offers protection from cardiovascular diseases and diabetes. Every day, the world consumes 300 tons of caffeine, enough for 1 cup of coffee for every single person in the world. The most passionate coffee drinkers per capita are the Netherlands, Denmark, Iceland, Norway, and at the very top, Finland, where people drink 3 times as much coffee as the average American.
The coffee trees in which caffeine is harvested only grows commercially between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn in an area called the Coffee Belt. To access this caffeine, bees must pollinate the flowers of a coffee tree which bears bright red berries. These berry trees do not ripen all their berries at the same time, so they need to be hand-picked and sorted. Caffeine is found naturally in coffee trees. It is actually a natural insecticide that developed in the past. It will paralyze and kill a bug, meaning that if that bug dares to have it for dinner, it will experience its first and last caffeine high. Of course, whether this experience is pleasant or not is currently not known. It is not advisable to use coffee as a weapon for murder. That's because all you need to do for a 50% chance of death is to take their mass and multiply by 150 milligrams, meaning that to murder a 90 kilogram human, take your morning cup of coffee and multiply it 90 times. And don't let them go to the bathroom after.
Alright folks, and that concludes our show about caffeine. Thanks for tuning in and see you next week. And now, puns with David. Selling coffee has its perks for those who have been so lucky.